Wasted potential. This is something that unfortunately happens all the time in the world of comic books, and that is why on this channel I have been doing a series pretty much once a week where I go over wasted potential and what could have been. Now, it goes anything from animated series to live action movies, their cinematic universes, animation, different animated movies, and what they could have been. Unfortunately, this happens all the time in the world of comic books, and us as fans are left with the thought, what could have been, or what happened to that wasted potential. And that brings me to what we have today, but today's actually an interesting one, because I think this is the first one that we're going to talk about that actually still has a slim chance to come true and maybe even return. And that's because today we are talking Young Justice Season 5, what could have been. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell. Alright, Young Justice Season 5. As I mentioned, this is a project that, in my opinion, has the most likely chance to return and actually come true. And the biggest reason for that is we had a huge gap before, and the show did get canceled before. Season 2 premiered in 2012, and then we had to wait 7 years for it to return. And we did get a return. It came back on the DC Universe streaming platform that then became Max, and then HBO Max, back to Max, and again, you get it. They changed it a lot, but that's where that show ended up. They did do a season 4. Whether you loved or hated those 2 seasons, it was still really cool to see the return of our beloved characters and see what they had been up to and where the story could go. And I feel like a lot of season 3 and 4 set up so much that was going to happen in season 5. And unlike in previous videos where I was able to share with all of you the exact plans, what was actually going to happen episode by episode or movie by movie, this one is a very special case. And that's why I say this season, season 5 of Young Justice, has the best chance we've seen to actually return. And that's because the creators still have not released their full vision for season 5. And the biggest reason for that is because they do still plan to try to pitch that. As we know, there was a bunch of turnover at DC, and with Warner Brothers Discovery kind of merging together, with David Zaslav taking over, Peter Safran, James Gunn. So is there potential for Young Justice Season 5 to actually return? Yes. Is that going to make this video somewhat difficult? Yes. However, luckily for all of you, I am a pretty big nerd, and obviously I have seen all of the 4 seasons up until this point of Young Justice, and I also did a ton of digging, ton of research, and I did find several concepts and several confirmations from the creators of some of their plans for season 5. Now again, some of it is going to be speculation based on things that happened in season 3 and 4, but some of it will also be things that have been actually confirmed. And again, another really interesting thing is, unlike with a lot of the other series or movies that I've talked about, not many of them had a post-credit teaser. A few of them did, especially with the Snyderverse. However, with this series, we had a post-credit teaser. We pretty much know exactly what the main story of season 5 was going to be, so I'm just going to get right into it. It was going to be some type of Apocalypse War storyline, and it was obviously going to include Darkseid. We do know that Vandal Savage and Darkseid did make a pact. They were going to leave Earth alone for now, and then Vandal Savage and Darkseid were going to team up together to take down the League, and then Earth was going to be divided amongst the two of them. Obviously, Darkseid only wanted the anti-life equation, which in season 3 he came very, very close to obtaining. So was this going to cause some sort of fracture between the light and the forces of Apocalypse? Yes, absolutely. They're all villains, most of them are very selfish, and we know that Darkseid does not view anyone as his equal. Everyone is beneath him because he is one of the new gods. Even the other new gods are beneath him to Darkseid. He is above all. So if he had the chance, he would have absolutely betrayed them. He was only working with them to get the anti-life equation. That being said, the teaser that we got at the end was Supergirl in some type of apocalyptic gear and Mary Marvel, which I believe she was in season 4. She appeared with those students who were on the bus, and then she got kind of ousted by all of them. So she is now with them as well, and this would have created a really interesting dynamic of her going against Billy Batson, Shazam, and then also, or rather, it might not be Shazam. I think he was still called Captain Marvel in that universe. However, season 3 and 4, I don't know, because since the rights changed, I don't know if they started referring to him as Shazam or not, but nevertheless, Captain Marvel slash Shazam would have faced off against Mary Marvel, which would have been really interesting and really cool to see. And then seeing Supergirl having to fight Superman and Superboy would have been awesome. And to see Clark have to deal with the fact that we just had Kryptonians and they turned out to be evil, now have to face off against not just a Kryptonian, but someone who's related to him, Kara. And that would have been a huge struggle for him, especially with what he went through in season 4 with thinking that he did lose Connor because he quote unquote died for a little bit. We do know that he ended up just in the Phantom Zone, but still, that was something that Clark did have to grieve and then come to terms to. Obviously, once he returned, things were better, but still, Superman was then faced with Zod and Zod's son and having to try to defeat them. And then having in the added layer that, hey, now your cousin is here, another Kryptonian, and she's evil. That would have been awesome to see play out on screen. Obviously, having Superman face off against Darkseid would have been amazing. I don't think there would have been a ton of members of the OG Young Justice team that could have stood against Darkseid. I love Nightwing more than anyone else. However, he's not doing anything against Darkseid. Artemis, she's awesome, one of my favorite characters. She's not doing anything. Aqualad, same thing. Don't think he'd be that useful. We've seen Darkseid split Aquaman in half before, just with his Omega beams, and rip off one of Wonder Woman's arms. So Darkseid is very formidable. Superman is normally the only one who can face off against him. At times, Batman uses his mind to beat him, but again, that's Batman, and why? Because he's Batman. That being said, I think it would have led to us seeing the Light and the Justice League teaming up together, and that would have propelled a potential season 6 coming out, where finally the Light is going head to head with the Justice League. Because for a while it has been them going against the League by proxy. We do know in season 1 they did the whole mind control thing, but it wasn't really the Light directly fighting the League. And then same with season 2, it was more so them using the Reach, and then the battle was with the Reach, and the Light somewhat teamed up with them through Lex Luthor to help stop the Reach at the very end of the season. And then obviously with season 3 we didn't really get any type of actual battle between them, and then season 4 was mainly about the Phantom Zone and all of the Kryptonians. So a lot of setup that we definitely need more substance from. Not only that, and all the exciting things that we could have seen happen with Darkseid, Apocalypse, the Furies, especially because 2 of the Furies are Kara and Mary Marvel. But all of the Darkseid stuff aside, and the potential team up with the Light, some of the other stuff we could have seen would have been much more grounded, and that would have been a Bat Family storyline. This has been something that has been confirmed that they did plan to do, either in a season 5 or in a potential season 6. And it was something that we had set up in season 3, and that's Jason Todd. Seeing the death in the family storyline from this universe's perspective, and seeing how the current Jason Todd, that version of Red Hood, has to go up against Nightwing, Tim Drake, Batman. And again, we know Ra's al Ghul is kind of training him up, similar to how he did with Damian Wayne. And to mention Damian Wayne, we have him. Now, he is still a baby in season 3, so I don't think we would have gotten anything from him until if it got to a season 6 and there was some sort of time skip, then it would make sense for him to appear. And it would have been actually really interesting to see his dynamic with Jason, and especially if it was the 2 of them going against maybe Nightwing and Tim Drake, or add in Batman to that mix. That would have been a really interesting dynamic to see unfold on screen. And then obviously we do know another really cool storyline we would have gotten would have centered around the League of Shadows or the League of Assassins, depending on which universe we're talking about. Because Ra's al Ghul is no longer in charge of them, We did see that in season 3. It is now Slade Wilson Deathstroke, with Lady Shiva right there as his right-hand person. Bane is also associated with them. So seeing a storyline with the Shadows and just seeing how that unfolds, how the League tries to stop them. Obviously, they're part of the light. So could that have added to the bigger scheme and bigger plot that we got? Yes, absolutely. But it's just a real shame that we got teased with potentially the best cliffhanger out of any of the seasons at the end of season 4, with the potential for an apocalypse war, and then some rumors that came out that the light would actually betray the forces of apocalypse and help out our heroes. That would have been so cool and just so awesome to see such a change in dynamic, them going from hating each other to now, hey, we have to team up. It's similar to what they did in the DCAU when Darkseid merged with Brainiac, and Lex Luthor and his version of the Legion of Doom had to help the Justice League. And at the end of it, yes, they did part ways, but for the time being, they trusted each other and they fought side by side as equals, as mutual companions against this greater force. And I think if they did something like that, it could have given us some of the best stories we've ever seen unfold in a comic book show, not even just in animation, but just in comic book history. And that's why it is a real shame. However, I am very hopeful because season 4, I believe, premiered around 2022, and it's only been about 3 years since then. So given the track record of them having 2 seasons and then going on hiatus for 6, 7, 8 years, that kind of makes sense and still leaves some room for a surprise announcement from James Gunn saying, hey, we're going to do an Elseworlds storyline about Young Justice. That would make the fans go crazy. They'd love it. Obviously, they'd love Teen Titans Season 6 as well. Either one, I think, would be amazing. In my opinion, I think there's a little bit more substance with what was left on the table with Young Justice, especially because we did only get 4 seasons. And again, say what you will about if it fell off. That'll be in another video that I will cover, because I do think there was a fall off. However, I think it happened at a different point than a lot of people think. That being said, the other major thing that was teased a little bit, however I couldn't find anything concrete, was the return of Wally West. A fan favorite character, one of my favorite characters in this entire show. I love Wally West as the Flash. Again, I grew up with Justice League, the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, and guess who was the main Flash? Wally West. He's awesome, love his sense of humor, love his dynamic and relationship with Artemis, obviously, and then also with Dick Grayson and just their friendship and bond that they have together. And I would really love to see him return in some way. And the reason I say I couldn't find anything concrete there were some conflicting reports that I found, one of which was he was just trapped in the Speed Force and was set to return. Another thing was they were going to do some type of multiverse storyline, not an overarching story that would take up the whole season, maybe 3 to 5 episodes of an arc. And in that arc, Wally West from another world would be introduced, and for some reason, he would end up staying on our Earth. I, in my opinion, would prefer him to just be in the Speed Force and come back. If you do another Earth, another world's Flash, Wally West, it would take away a lot of the dynamic. How could you still have that best friend kinship? Even if he's best friends with another Dick Grayson and with Artemis and they just happen to die in his world, that would feel weird, that would feel forced, and I just think it would make for such a better moment if the actual Wally West did return. What do all of you think? Would you enjoy season 5? What storylines did you want to see most actually come on screen? Or are you totally happy with how it ended? Do you not care about the Apocalypse War and Mary Marvel, all that storyline and Wally West returning? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you guys are down there, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.